Well, South Africa is pretty much being seen as pushing the African agenda over in Davos, where power constraints is a massive African problem. What are some of the discussions being held around Africa's power situation?
I think, Alicia, the discussions so far have actually been very positive. I think there's a recognition of the importance of security of electricity supply to African economic development and in particular in African emergence from the recession. And the sense that I have is that there's just this overwhelming amount of support. People want us to succeed. We've had a lot of interest from the financial community in assisting us with the debt that we're going to need to raise to fund the Eskom build program. But also there's been a lot of discussion around mechanisms that we can put in place to ensure access to electricity to those on the African continent that don't currently have access to electricity.
And meeting over on that end, and what agenda has Eskom actually attended Davos with?
Well, we have come here with several roles. The one is part of Team South Africa, and there we are talking to the entire Davos community about South Africa and 2010, sharing with them the preparations that we put in place for 2010, and from an Eskom perspective, just giving the assurances on the security of the electricity supply over that period. We also are talking to various stakeholder groupings in Davos about our sustainability processes, the agendas that we have on renewable energy, and our overall climate change approach. And then finally, we're spending a lot of time talking to the financial community about the bond issues that we're going to be processing in the coming months and coming years.
Of course, Steve, all of that largely positive at this stage, but here in South Africa, we've certainly, and it's undeniable, have had Eskom in the spotlight, the image of the company being tarnished by headlines of lack of foresight and lack of adequate planning capabilities as well. On a global scale, are you seeing any criticism, any critical honing into the operations right now?
Very little, and I think that what we tend to see more is understanding, because we've seen, and that is that many power companies and many nations have been through similar things. And I think it's understanding and saying, well, yes, it's a pity that you were not able to foresee this kind of thing. But for example, we in the US, we've had specific examples saying, well, South Africa may be going through this, but the US has been through this in California, in New York. And so I think there's generally an appreciation of the kind of challenges that major power utilities do have in an era of highly variable economic growth, difficulties with planning, difficulties with financing, cash flows, etc.
One would assume that then all opening up some kind of discussion against or for the possibility of IPPs running successfully in South Africa. I mean, have you seen interest from IPPs to enter home ground here?
Well, not so much at Davos. In South Africa, yes, there is some interest, and I think that interest will be tested when we go through the process of signing up the IPPs and actually seeing whether we can close out on, in particular, the financing on the bigger IPP projects. But I think that what we are seeing from the financial community is a fair amount of interest in the power sector developments overall. So in financing for Eskom, for IPPs, the potential for equity participation in Kusile, etc. So there is a lot of interest, but at the same time, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating.
That in terms of when it comes to security of electricity supply, let's look at costs here, because we know one of the major attractive forces for business and investment into South Africa in the past has been the low cost base as far as power supply is concerned. It's since turned out to be an unsustainable and uneconomic price level, especially for miners. Do you see the possible and proposed tariff hikes being proposed here in South Africa changing that dynamic at all? What kind of response are you getting from business leaders?
We actually haven't had much commentary on the price increases, and I won't go into that one in detail. We're going through the regulatory process, and we will wait for that one to work its way through. But I do think that there is an understanding generally that the cost of energy globally is going up. There's a lot of discussion here around the post-Copenhagen processes that need to be put in place and the implications that has for the pricing of resources generally, and the need to internalize the external costs that are incurred through things such as climate change. So I think that businesses around the world are seeing that energy prices are going to be going up. And in fact, there was an executive from a major U.S. utility that was just saying this morning that even though he hasn't got any particular constraints on carbon right now, is that when he's making his investment decisions, he's pricing in a significant cost for carbon into the future.